So, of course, today I want to talk about the three common misconceptions about the M word, mold, but also I want to talk about when should you have a mold inspection? Because that's something that's on top of mind, and again, for buyers, for sellers, they're looking to pinch pennies. They're looking for every place that they don't have to. Again, you feel like you just keep outlaying money when you're buying or selling. So when should you have a mold inspection?
Welcome to the Jennifer J. Hammond Podcast. Jennifer is a licensed realtor, educator, speaker, and best-selling author. Jennifer's goal is to help you find your yay in every day.
Hello. This is Jennifer J. Hammond, and I'm so excited. You think I'm crazy. We're going to talk about mold. I'm so excited about talking about mold. This is Brandon Faust. He's the owner of Mold Solutions USA. It's a mold and water expert. It's a company that has overseen thousands of mold remediation projects throughout the U.S., but their focus is in the Tampa Bay area. So welcome, Brandon.
Thank you for having me. I can't believe how many times you said the M word.
I know, the M word, the dreaded M word. I think all real estate agents shiver with the M word. So, of course, today I want to talk about the three common misconceptions about the M word, mold, but also I want to talk about when should you have a mold inspection? Because that's something that's on top of mind, and again, for buyers, for sellers, they're looking to pinch pennies. They're looking for every place that they don't have to. Again, you feel like you just keep outlaying money when you're buying or selling. So when should you have a mold inspection?
Well, I would say, especially in a humid climate like Tampa Bay, pretty much every time. I would say, get a mold inspection, As a buyer, you definitely want one, but even as a seller, you might want to get that mold inspection done before you put your home on the market, because you don't want to find down the road, once you're under contract, once you put all this time and effort into selling your home, oh, wow, we actually have a mold situation. And now they either run or they are using it as a negotiation technique to get you to lower the price of your home, where the project could actually be, less than what they're asking, and that way you can also know that you're passing along something that isn't a problematic home, right?
And I think that's so important as real estate agents. I'm licensed as a real estate agent in Washington, D.C., Virginia, Maryland, and Florida. And I would say the one thing to know is we're always trying to solve problems. And one of the best things you can do is solve a problem before it becomes a problem. Yes. And a bigger problem and a bigger problem. And I think that that's one thing as a seller, it's always important to know the issues prior so that, again, it doesn't become a negotiation, because so often when people are negotiating, they're looking for a much bigger number than if it was just taken care of.
Correct.
Because of the unknowns. People are always afraid of the unknowns, which, speaking of, there's three common misconceptions about mold. What are those?
Well, I think the first thing that most people know about is toxic black mold. That's the big concern that, you hear about. It's in the news. People are scared about it, right? And of course, the technical term for black mold is Stachybotrys. And no doubt, it is a concerning mold. You don't particularly want to have it in your home for sure. It does release gas that can cause issues. But black mold is not the only mold that you would want to be aware of or concerned about. Like, one of the molds that you find in AC systems all the time is a mold called cladosporium. And that particular mold, you can see it growing on vents. You can see it in the ducts. You can see it in the actual on the blower wheel. That can cause headaches, joint aches, respiratory reactions, things along those lines. So it's not just black mold, also even white mold. One time, I've gone into a number of condos, especially on the beach, where you have guys that have left their AC at like 81, 82, and they come in and then they have like white and green fuzz all over their furniture, all over the walls.
Oh.
And that's not the type of thing that you want the cleaning lady to take care of, right? Because the thing that most people don't realize is that mold is it's a living, breathing organism. And just like anything else, it wants to survive. It wants to perpetuate itself. It wants to defend itself, right? So when you attack it or you agitate it, it actually has two things that it does. It sends off spores for procreation purposes. And they will also release a gas called a mycotoxin to defend its territory and to protect itself. So the main thing on that one is just that black mold is not the only one that is concerning, you know, and sometimes it's kind of like pushed to the side. Oh, it's not that big a deal, you know, but in fact, you really do want to handle it professionally. So that would be misconception number one. Number two, spraying it down with bleach or even just any product. There's some, number one, bleach is more of a toxic type of product that you don't really want those fumes in your home, right? But even more importantly, if I was going to hit it with a green product and just spray it, what happens is, again, you send it into defense mode and you agitate it, and you don't want to do that, right? So there is a way that you approach these things in terms of a proper sequence, you know, containing the room or the area, having a filter that can remove particles that small, you know, potentially flushing the house with what's called negative air, vacuuming it up with a HEPA vacuum rather than just a normal vacuum, doing a damp wipe. And then I always recommend doing a whole home sanitization, because when you fill the volume of a space with a non-toxic product that can eliminate airborne spores, you're sort of replicating the way that spores move around. They float, right? So you want something that's going to float long enough or hang in the air long enough that it can actually eat into the mold spore and destroy it and stop it from then being able to regrow, right?
Nice. Yeah. And it's important to understand that, because again, there's so much confusion, and that's why, you know, we talk about misconceptions. People just don't realize, what do you mean? If I bleach it, it's done, right? You know? Absolutely.
And the thing is, the most important thing, like, why is mold a concern? Is it because it doesn't look good? Well, it doesn't. Is it because, you know, people have said bad things about it? No. The biggest reason is because of the air quality issue and the health impact that mold can have. That's really the biggest concern. So realistically, if the mold just stays on a wall and it doesn't disturb you, then no big deal. The problem is it doesn't stay on the wall. It does release the spores. It does release the gas, and those things go airborne. And with the central heating and air, you know, that movement is constantly going around the house. So it can wind up in places that it never began. And unfortunately, it can also, you know, wind up, you know, where people are inhaling it and breathing it. So definitely hitting it with bleach is basically like taking a baseball bat to a beehive. You might get rid of some of it, right? But especially if you're allergic to bee stings, it's like a really bad idea, you know? So that would probably be misconception number two. And then misconception number three, I hear this one all the time. Oh, it's just a little mildew. You know, it's just that smell. That's not musty. You know, and then you kind of put the fragrances over to kind of mask it, right? Look, the bottom line, if it's musty, it's moldy, and you got to find out where it's coming from, and then ultimately properly remove it. And I understand I probably sound a little bit like maybe over the top on these things, but the thing is, you know, my son, when he was a month old, he got sick from mold exposure. And it was from a leak that we didn't know about. My mom had come to visit. She was taking, you know, showers in, you know, a bathroom that we never used. And it had a pinhole leak that only would only go when somebody was using the shower. So that water went behind the wall, it wicked up a shelving system. And that was the same room that the central heating and air conditioning return was located. So that mold, and then there was about 2 feet of mold under the shelving, behind the shelving system that when I moved it, I found it. But that moldy air was then blowing around the entire house. And he woke up 3 days in a row, basically almost having like an asthma attack as a little baby, a month old. Oh. So when I was able to, you know, handle the leak, clean it up, and then sanitize the entire home, sanitize the ducts, and then the next day he slept an hour longer and he had no difficulty breathing. That was a huge moment for me in terms of really understanding kind of what my purpose is and what I'm going for in terms of helping people, and really making sure that their air quality is exceptional and that there's nothing that is going to cause issues for them that is organic in nature that could trigger physical situations that could have. And honestly, as a new parent, we would have taken them to doctors and who knows what type of test they would have done on him, and it was completely environmental, know?
Wow.
So, that was the thing that kind of started it for me, where I really started to feel that it was more than just a business. It was more like a mission for me.
It's a mission. And I think it's important to say that you are licensed and a certified mold remediator and assessor here in Florida. But also it's really important to understand that, again, there's a big difference between your home inspector or, quite frankly, the real estate agent or other people who are not trained, because you are trained not only to be able to see it, but you understand the proper remediation process, correct?
Correct. So, you have, there's a few home inspectors that I know that are actually really good mold inspectors, but they are few and far between. Okay. So if you have a home inspector that's like, hey, I'll throw on a couple air samples, don't even bother, right? Don't waste your money. You want to get a guy who really does know their stuff, that can go in and look and knows where to find it and knows what it looks like. And then is going to do, a variety of samples between air samples, direct samples, tape lifts, so that you really are getting your money's worth. And you also are making sure that it's a complete product, because, if it's just kind of like, oh, we'll throw in a couple air samples for a couple $100, look, it's not worth it. The air samples are kind of hit and miss, just basically capturing, for 5 minutes, 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot cube, so it's not really kind of telling you what you need to know. You want somebody that's going to go in there, do thermal imaging, do moisture mapping, look in the cabinets, look into the, the vents, the ducts, really knows what to look for, and then samples that, and then gives you a report and a protocol, right, to basically what you would need to do to handle it. And if they don't find anything, then you can really have confidence as a seller and as a buyer. Hey, we're going to be totally A-okay if somebody brings it up. Or if they do bring it up, you're like, oh yeah, we checked into that just to make sure it wasn't a situation, just to be on the safe side. And here's the report. You're all good, So I would say, hey, either an expert home inspector that really knows their stuff when it comes to mold, or just get a hyper-focused mold inspector. I personally, I do free environmental consultations. So I'll go in and look at a home and see what's going on for, homeowners. But if I find something that is hot or I think is an issue, then I'm going to say, listen, the only person that can officially tell you that this is mold is the laboratory. Even as an assessor, I can only say, hey, this looks like something that's suspect, but the only person that can really officially say it is the lab. So I always push it out to another inspector, because I specialize in doing the handling. I specialize in fixing the problem. And a lot of problems we can handle in less than 48 hours,
Which is exciting to know that it can be handled quickly, because again, it feels, I think it's the unknown, but two, it's the fact that it's deadly. It can be so deadly. It can really, and as you used with the example with your son, I think it's so scary to think that you could have something that deadly, that damaging, that awful in your home, but yet there is a solution. And that's one of the biggest parts about it, is to know there is a solution. Remediation is possible. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to live in your house for 6 months.
Absolutely not. And the thing that's also, I think, really important to know is that you have 3 levels of mold, right? There's like allergenic, pathogenic, and toxic. And yes, the toxic type can be fatal to humans and animals if exposed for long enough, and depending on the person's immune system, yes, it can be. But a lot of the molds, it's not to make less of them, because honestly, even if it's allergenic, you're overworking or taxing your immune system, which could predispose you to other situations. And some of the pathogenic molds that are disease causing, after long-term exposure, it can wind up to, bigger problems. And I'll save that for off the air. But the main thing is that, yes, it can be handled. It's not, in some remediation projects, no question, they are a pain. They are a headache, probably more of an immediate headache than the mold, but long-term, it's going to be way better, But in some cases, especially if it's like a humidity-driven mold where it's surface, we can actually go in and handle that. And, realistically, start at 9:30, finish by 4:30. You can be back in the home by 7:30. And then we leave some equipment for 24 to 48 hours. and you could get a sampling after that and you're good to go. The place should be totally fantastic, So it doesn't have to be just because you hear the M word or you get a test and it's positive for that horrible 4-letter word. We can help you handle that really easily.
Well, thank you so much. I want to make sure that people know how to get a hold of you. Will you share your website and your social media?
Absolutely. It's the same across the boards. It's moldsolutionsusa.com or Mold Solutions USA on Instagram. We have a lot of tips there, and pictures and, showing kind of what it looks like, what to look for, where to look for it, settings that you might want to have in your home for like AC, et cetera, things to kind of help you prevent the mold from coming into your home in the first place. So definitely you follow us on Instagram or, I have a YouTube channel as well. Same thing, Mold Solutions USA.
Perfect. And as you know, I'm always looking for that silver lining. I'm always looking for the brightness and the happy thing in that we can find. There is a solution for mold. And so I'm going to ask you if you'll lift your voice and say yay with me as we go off the air.
Absolutely.
Perfect. So 3, 2, 1.
Yay! Awesome.